The following is a transcript of a conversation between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am. 28th December 2020, Africa. Me. And from the heights of spirit in Antarctica, from the vision of South America, the voice of North America, the heartbeat of Europe, the being of Asia, and the creative axis of Oceania, we come to the roots and power of Africa. We arrive at the origin. I am, the center of Pangaea, the original center of the world. Me, Africa, the land of the sun. There are many hypotheses of what its name means, but perhaps the most accurate is the Latin construction that refers to the Sahara Desert as a place where there is no cold, where the sun reigns. Africa, sunny, from the Greek Afrike, without cold. The ancients had a deep view of things, but we will not deny that to put names were too obvious. I am. Well, it was the way they could identify the things they were referring to, describing what was there. Germany, where there are tribes of many men. Spain, land where there are many rabbits. Mediterranean, sea in the middle of lands, and so on. Easy. Me. Why is it the origin? I am. Well, you have to go back to the history of Pangaea. Imagine the continent. Me. I'm used to seeing maps, but hey, it deserves a description. I am. Africa is the largest continent after Asia, and it's the one in the middle of all the others. Although one could say that any continent could be taken as the center of the other continents, it is not so. Do you know what an antipode is? Me. Yes. It is the opposite point geographically in a sphere. What exactly is on the opposite side to what I am on the other side? Popularly in the cartoons, it is shown how, by digging a well to the other side of the world, you would leave for China, since popularly the saying has been established that China is on the other side of the world. However, the only countries you could really go out in China if you dug straight down would be Chile and Argentina. I am. Well, Africa has the entire Pacific Ocean as its antipode. If you dig in Tangier, Morocco, you would be finding Auckland in New Zealand. Along the Sahara Desert, you find Fiji, Samoa, New Caledonia, and French Polynesia. If you go through Botswana, you will find Hawaii. And across the Congo, the scattered islands of Kiribati. The rest is ocean, water. This shows you something interesting. Africa is the antipode of the largest ocean, far from all the lands of the world, heart of Pantalasa. In other words, Africa, on the opposite side, is the heart of Pangaea. All continents break off and expand into the Pacific east and west, north and south from Africa. About 200 million years ago, Pangaea began to fragment, and over the next 150 million years would begin to move from Africa in all directions, creating the continents we know today. Me. That's the origin. I am. Africa is one of the oldest territories, at least the lower plates, that is, the South African Massif, which runs from Angola to Malawi and from Zambia to South Africa. During the Cambrian period, the formation of small volcanic islands made the orography of the earth not very rigid but flexible, which linked these island chains to this massif. There began to be the first lakes and the first non-marine animals. South America appeared as the plate began to rise against the coasts of Africa, just like North America. Europe was nothing more than a collection of islands that roamed the north, joining each other and disconnecting for certain periods. Asia and its vast plains formed on the way to the North Pole, cooling the world, while below, Antarctica was at the height of the Indian Ocean, with forests, jungles, and grasslands attached to India and Madagascar. The Antarctic Peninsula and Patagonia were like two arms holding South Africa to the south, and the Middle East stretched into auctions along the east, still unrecognizable, touching the corals that would once be the Tethys Sea and much later Tibet. On the other hand, the Appalachians were a huge mountain range that separated the great North America and Amazonian desert from the jungles of the Sahara, and this effect would be reversed by splitting the continents. Although continentally Africa is the center of the other territories, it was not the origin of all species, although it was the one that would bring consciousness to Earth, the human, me. We emerged from Africa. I am. From the south, between Mozambique and Namibia, South Africa, Botswana, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. The fracturing of the East African plate guided humans northward across lakes Malawi, Rukwa, Tanganyika, Kivu, Edward, Albert, and Victoria into the power center that would drive humans to expand around the world, Ethiopia. From there, the tribes migrated to the grasslands of the Sahara and the oases of Arabia, walking to the Persian and Indus valleys, from where they would migrate to the rest of the world as Homo sapiens. For millions of years, humanizing hominids inhabited Africa, the continent that has seen humans born. Me. Here is the force of our creation. Why is it not the sacrum, if it represents the womb and gestation and manifestation? I am. Because Africa did not create what humanity is. Africa created the seed and nurtured the tree of life from its roots. It was not the one who saw the fruits, but the one who cared for the seeds of the forest they created afterwards. This is where the fire that initiates the ascension of the being to life is lit. Me. The planetary kundalini. I am. You can see the serpent of light in the rest of the world, connecting all geographies, but that snake doesn't touch Africa. Well, on this continent, there is another snake that gives life to the one that moves the world. It arises on Table Mountain, in the sting of South Africa, the Cape Peninsula. It continues through the Drakensberg mountain range and the Lesotho Massif, ascending the Zambezi River and crossing the Great Lakes of East Africa and Ethiopia, climbing the Red Sea mountain ranges along the Nile River to the Sinai and Delta in the Mediterranean. There his energy rises through Israel, Lebanon, and Syria to the Serpent's Eye, Turkey. Me. Africa is like the engine of Kundalini, related to the genitals of the earth, the seeds, eggs, and sperm, land of generation, of the impulse to go deep, light the fire of the sun on earth, nourish the serpent of light in a physical and spiritual orgasm. I am. The black race is the bearer of the most ancestral and pure records of the earth, of the origin of the human from the elements. African ancestors are the common ground between all of us, between every man and woman. There is the link that separated us from the animal kingdom to start the human kingdom. There resides the memories of the first genetic modifications of beings from the stars. In the cells of the direct descendants of Africa lies the most ancestral power in the world, which has become religion in many cases, inherited by slaves in the Americas. Africa is the root of the world, the force of ascension. That is why South Africa was united to the Antarctic Peninsula. The torus reminds us, in which the spiritual caresses the depth of the material to manifest its dreams. Me. And why does Africa suffer so much? I am. The cultures of Africa have lived a very different history than the cold peoples of the north. Africa is a hot continent of enormous extensions. The way of living in herds and tribes has been useful for millennia. The exchange between the tribes, without limits, took advantage of the necessary and abundant resources. Unlike its neighbors in Asia and Europe, who every 6 months experienced the change of climate and the absence of food, Africa continued under heat and abundance. The cold territories of the world had to develop other skills, create reserves, agriculture, monetary economy, accumulation of goods for times of scarcity, defense of fertile and limited territories, creation of tools and weapons, turned villages into cities and tribes into civilizations. This road was not traveled by the peoples of Oceania or Africa for a simple territorial and climatological reason. When colonialism began in the 15th century, Africa became a terrain of easy exploitation because the tribes could not put up opposition, had not developed the survival skills of their northern neighbors, and led them to live under subjugation and slavery. They knew nothing else, and were forced to live under imperial and religious rule, both Christian and Muslim. And suddenly, in the 19th century, came the independences, the republics, and the apparent democracies. Me. But I am. But it was not a personal achievement. The creation of countries, nations, states was a globalizing imposition. If you are not a colony, you are a state. The fictitious boundaries created by the colonizers became boundaries of meaningless countries, which divided tribes, families, hunting, sowing, and gathering territories. Religions and politics became the new form of struggle between tribes, generating endless wars because they were now sold weapons. The African peoples never had the opportunity to carry out the process of any development alone. From absolute freedom, they went to the worst of slavery, and from it they passed to the republics without having known the development of what it means. In a short period of time, they went through many traumas, and it is still a continent traumatized by the pressure of the world. And many have taken advantage of this trauma, going about their business, using our living ancestors as an inferior race with which to experiment. Me. The only reason Africa is poor is a question of human political and economic systems. I am. It is a delicate issue because Africa is the land of power. It is the beginning of the most powerful energy of all, and yet it lives subjugated because they have been taught to fear what they are capable of doing. They have lost power because they have been taught that real power lies in the Greek and Roman systems, that to be rich you have to be like America or Europe. That is not the case. Each territory has its own form of wealth, and that of Africa is not Europeanization, but the roots of its own earth. Therefore, to light the kundalini again, it is necessary to bring heaven to earth, to descend the spirit to the body, to enjoy creation again, to go to the roots. As long as humans continue to look to heaven, Africa will be poorer and more disconnected. But when the human remembers that the only way a tree can reach the heavens is with deep roots, then we will bring this magical continent back to life. Africa needs to feel the pleasure of living again. The human needs to remember the pleasure of existing. There is the power, not in getting things, but in feeling them. Me. Humanity has a lack of control of kundalini because our power was enslaved by cultures and religions, like Africa. I am. But here, remember, it's not what subdues you, it's what you do with it. The only reason someone has subdued you is because you have given them the power to do so. The only reason someone takes away your power is because you fear your own power. The only reason you keep living trapped in density is for fear of your light. You give power to others because you don't know how to manage it in yourself. Once things happen, the guilt no longer lies in those who subjected you to such an experience, but in the responsibility of what you do with what you lived. Me. It's like the Jewish people who, regardless of what may be said about them in history, have always risen from the ashes. They have always known how to use pain, turning it into art, and suffering into freedom. I am. The people chosen by God are not a blood or ethnicity, but that human who chooses himself as the creator of his own reality. The only way to free yourself from the roots of the world is to become them to flourish again. Me. Will Africa flourish again? I am. Only if South America decides to open its eyes and see the long-awaited moment. only if it manages to see the Antarctic spirit. Only then will the light return to the roots, and Africa will shine again. Me. I put all my intention so that the land of our origin will be illuminated as the Atlanteans knew it was. I am. The Atlantean people recognized this power of Africa, and so they populated the Nile River from north to south. They knew that only from here could they light the fire of the world, sow a new humanity. Me. And now we've done the same thing again, in a new time. I am Africa. I am. I am the origin.
My heart